Better Preach, episode 98, Bad Talks, Surprising Struggles, and Preaching to the Whole Planet, with Father Mike Schmitz. Welcome to Better Preach, a podcast for Catholic leaders on developing and delivering great Catholic talks. I'm your host, Ryan O'Hara, a Catholic speaker who specializes in parish missions and parish retreats. And I'm so excited to join you on your journey of communicating the true, the good, and the beautiful. So I don't know if you know this, but Father Mike Schmitz is a huge fan of Superman. But in my conversation today, you get the really strong impression that he's got a lot more in common with the everyday man, just you and me, and the kinds of things that we struggle with. And he shared just humbly and honestly about some of his speaking missteps and struggles and the questions that he has around preaching. It gives us this beautiful window into the man, the disciple that's, behind the crazy number of views on YouTube and downloads on podcast apps. And by doing so, he gives us each permission to be real with each other and with the Lord, and to name those struggles in our spiritual life that we might normally, keep under wraps. But when we share it, it really does shed light on our own lives and the lives that we're in community with. This was a fantastic conversation. I'm so excited for you to hear it. Father Mike Schmitz is the Director of Youth and Young Adult Ministry for the Diocese of Duluth, as well as the chaplain for the Newman Center at the University of Minnesota Duluth. He has preached to thousands locally and nationally, and is the host of the widely popular podcasts Bible in a Year and the Catechism in a Year, produced by Ascension. Father Mike also offers weekly homilies on iTunes, Hallow, and bulldogcatholic.org, and weekly videos viewed by millions on YouTube through Ascension Presents. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the show, especially if you're new to the show. Please reach out at ryanohara.org/betterpreach. There's a little contact form there, or you could let me know your thoughts through a rating and written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. But also you could, come by, say hi on Instagram. Would love to connect there too, at Better Preach. Let's get into it. Father Mike Schmitz, we did it. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for being here on the Better Preach podcast.
Absolutely. I am honored and grateful. I think I was in the midst of recording. The first time was at the Catechism in a Year. I was recording and you reached out like, well, maybe after that's done. And it's been done for over a year now, maybe two.
Well, I was after you're done catechizing the whole world, then maybe we could chat.
No, I'm grateful. Thanks for your persistence.
You are welcome, Father. One of the things we talk about all the time in this podcast, I give people an option. I'm not going to give you this option, but I give people this option. Worst talk, first talk. I'm not so much interested in your first talk. I'm actually interested in one of your worst talks, Father. Mm-hmm. Tell me about a time, but don't go so far back that bring us to a time in the last decade, in the last 5 years, where you thought, we just kind of missed the mark. What does that look like for you to not hit maybe what you're going for when you're handed a microphone?
Yep. The one it comes up right away. First one is, I'm not going to name the high school, but my dad went to that high school. And I was very excited. I was invited to this, and I was like, "Oh, this is so cool!" My dad went here, and I get to speak to the student body. And then what happened was, and it's not really Catholic. It's not a Catholic high school. It's not actually Catholic high school. And they really need to hear some truth, and they really need to hear this and that. And so even as I'm driving to the place, I had no idea what I'm going to talk about. But all I knew, and I remember walking away thinking, "Wait, I'll tell you the fallout in a second." Actually, I'll tell you the fallout right now. I showed up. I gave my talk. It is horrible. It is so bad. Not only are there more than so many points, there's so many points. It's very long. It goes over the extended time that they allotted for the student assembly. Then the people who invited me are giving me a tour. It was like the pro-life club at the Catholic high school. They were giving me a tour. And it's kind of like almost like they're embarrassed to be with me as I'm walking down the hallway with them showing me these things. On the drive home, I, at one point, pulled up Twitter. I probably was parked on the side of the road or maybe it stopped somewhere. And I saw all of these tweets from these mean tweets from these high school students.
No.
About just how horrible it was, what a tool I am, I felt so badly. I actually sent, they had some kind of, small check, stipend. I sent it back. And I was on the phone with someone from this high school, told them I was going to send back the check, and they didn't argue. It wasn't like, no, 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 keep it. It was like, yep, that makes sense. The chaplain was this old priest. I'd heard about him. He was kind of legendary in some ways. He wrote me a letter, just kind of like, hey, sometimes such and such, and just kind of like this. Wasn't a letter of encouragement. It was a letter of, you need to do better kind of a situation.
Wow.
And so it wasn't even my perception, like, oh, they didn't laugh as hard, or and I
No.
don't think they really got what I was trying to say. I missed it so badly. Yeah, it was horrible.
So give me a couple of points. You said it went
Yeah.
long. Where else did you miss?
I would also say that I've said everything I said in that talk, in other talks, that went great. And so
Fair.
I went back and had to go like, okay, what was this? Okay, so one, logistically speaking, you're invited to a high school. They are fitting you in between this class and that class.
That's right.
And you have to. Secondly, okay, so as we know, at some point you come in and your audience doesn't know you.
Yep.
And so the whole reason why people do, here's the, self-effacing story, here's the funny thing, here's the whatever, it's to build trust in some way.
Yep.
And so I did not spend any time building trust. And so here I come in, again, logistically or practically speaking, went too long. Secondly, or maybe primarily, I did not spend any time building trust. I just kind of launched into this thing. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Number 3, I didn't know for sure exactly what I wanted them to know. And this is, so I went from this to this to this. And it was kind of one of those, like, wait, what are you getting at? No, for myself, I know exactly, like, oh, this is where this point's made, and this point's and that point. But I'm talking to a bunch of high schoolers who, A, don't trust me, have to be at this assembly. They're a captive audience, and they don't know, like, what is your main point? And maybe the biggest thing, so that's really important, so important to note that I did not know exactly what I wanted them to walk away with. And that is, like, always the number one thing for me. But the last point, and this is the thing that is the icing on the cake, is I came into this audience with this assumption that, okay, they're at this non-Catholic Catholic high school, and they need the truth really badly. No one's been here to tell them the truth, and I need to tell them the truth.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I said it in an angry way.
No, sure.
I didn't. I said it in all the same ways I normally would say it, but I didn't love them.
Yeah.
And that is the number one thing. I look back and think, oh no, I was just there to speak to them. I did not love them. And so because I didn't love them, I didn't know what they needed to hear. I didn't even pray about what do they need to hear.
Right.
It was coming from a place of like, okay, what do they need to hear kind of a situation.
Yeah. Almost a judgment.
All those factors, came together, and it was the next week or maybe sometime in that same season. I have a very good friend, and he spoke at another Catholic high school in the same metro area. And I mean, I know people who couldn't care less about the Lord or about the faith, about the church. And they walked away feeling so inspired, so moved, so like, I'm loved. Like God, I matter to God. And I'm like, how did I miss it so badly?
Wow.
And that's why I missed it, because I didn't love them, because I didn't know exactly what I wanted them to walk away with. I didn't spend any time building their trust or trying to earn their trust. And I didn't honor my hosts who had said, okay, you have a X number of minute talk.
That's a great story, because I think most of us out there in kind of Catholic speaking world know that experience so well. And it's heartening to know that you do too, Father. It's a great encouragement. That's one of the reasons I asked this question is because I'm imagining these moments. These are kind of seminal moments where something sticks with you and you make a determination, I'm not going to do that again.
Oh, yeah.
And it changes us.
And I'm glad you said that, because at first what I said was, I'm never going to Catholic high schools again.
Right.
Like that's what I said. It was, I'm not going to do that again. And then it was like, pause, wait a second. It was not them.
Yes.
It wasn't Catholic, quote unquote Catholic high schools. It was what I had not done and what I had done that was wrong. So I've been back to Catholic high schools, and I have to be reminded every single time. Well, actually, every time I do any kind of talk, doesn't matter how many people are there, I'm just reminded of those aspects, those elements of, are you here because you love them, or are you happen to be invited, so here you are, or they need to really know, kind of like this hard-nosed kind of a situation. And there's times when, of course, you have to tell the truth. That's difficult, but you have to do it because you love them and you love God, not for any other reason, I guess.
How early in life did you know that one of your superpowers was going to be communicating important messages to large groups of people? How early in life did you know this was going to be a significant part of your life?
Here's another kind of mistake that I had made. When I was in high school, my senior year in high school, I was invited to give the talk at the all sports banquet for our high school. I was very excited. I remember when I was maybe 7th or 8th grade, one of my older sisters was the athlete of the year. And I remember thinking, I want to be the athlete of the year, A, but B, there was a high schooler who gave a talk.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh, I want to do that. Like, I want to give that talk. And so when I was a senior, they asked me to give the talk. And I, stressed over it, fretted over it. And then ultimately, and I had some notes, but ultimately I kind of spoke more or less extemporaneously, had a, I guess we would say, big finish kind of thing where everyone got up on their feet. Kind of it. My first try, I was affirmed a lot in their responses to like, that was great, da, da, da. And so my first fixed mindset was, oh, I'm good at this, which I'm really grateful that happened, because then the next time I tried to give a talk, I was like, I'm going to do the same thing, have an idea, and then just go for it. That's how I do it. And it completely tanked.
Wow.
And I realized, oh, okay, right from the very beginning, not the very beginning, but the second thing after the very beginning was, if I'm going to do this, I have to work at it. Just because that first one went quote unquote well without a ton of preparation, that's not something you're just automatically going to be good at. And so if you want this to go well, you have to do this. I was grateful for the opportunity to give a message that I thought was important. And then also was humbled by that. Later on, when I was a seminarian, this is a bunch of years later then, I was invited back to my home parish, and they said, what do you want to talk about? And I said, well, anything. I said, well, the Eucharist. That's what I want to talk about. So I went back to my home parish one Wednesday night, gave a talk to all of the kids from, 9th grade through 12th grade in the faith formation program. And the immediate feedback I got was, hey, that was great. So pause on that, because then I also had this once again, fixed mindset, encouragement of, I do well at this. And then it must have been now only maybe 10 years ago. So I've been ordained a priest for 11 years, been doing all this, had some things that did well, and I was invited to speak at places. And a couple of youth ministers from that time, they said, oh yeah, we remember that first time we went back to St. Andrews in Brainerd. Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that time, haha. And they said, oh yeah, you were so bad. I was like, what? Yeah, all the adults were sitting in the back going like, oh my gosh, like, I hope they have classes for how to speak and preach, because this is horrible. And I just thought, I am so glad that I didn't know. I'm so glad for the gift of ignorance, because I thought it went well. And but more to the point of the question, I don't know if there's ever a moment, because I was just invited to speak to, here's 20 people. Here's the religious ed program. When I was in seminary, I worked at our teaching parish, probably 10 to 40 hours a week, those last 4 years of seminary. And I'd be invited to talk to this group of 6 kids. It all seems the same, because whether it's 6 9th graders or whether it's, the Eucharistic Congress, the point is still the same. It's proclaiming Jesus in a way that moves their hearts and moves their minds to a place where they want to say yes to him.
You're sharing actually more of some of the things we don't often hear or associate. I mean, Father Mike, you've had an incredible opportunity, such a unique call, and doors that have opened for you to speak in so many different times and places and people. And yet what you're sharing here is that this didn't come out of the box sort of pristine.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of challenge and growth and some growing self-awareness and people having some thoughts about that even many years down the road. How have you worked with the combination of praise and some of this critique? How do you sift through both of those things? Wow. And what's the critique that resonated the most with you, that really helped move you to make some changes?
Wow, that's a good question. Because there's so many moments I can point to and think of some critique of. The first thing that pops into my mind is I was first couple years ordained, and because I was on campus, I was free for Christmas to fill in somewhere else. And so I filled in my home parish and gave a homily at Christmas Eve, and all my family is there. There's like funny things, there's deeper things, there's kind of like some moments of conviction. And there was something I had said that had to do with, for lack of a better term, irregular marriages. And was more of like a points scoring thing. And I say point scoring, not in the sense that I was looking to just preach to the choir about this, as much as it would be like, okay, I should touch on this too. Here's the point I was making, was in the course of this, I was trying to say that here, if we're willing to accept Jesus as a baby, and we come to Christmas Eve Mass, Christmas Day Mass, because we love Jesus as a baby, and he is God as a baby, then we need to accept Jesus as a man when he gives us hard teachings, like,
Sure.
and I listed a couple hard teachings, including the teaching on divorce and remarriage. And that was in the context of, like, again, getting people engaged and kind of winning them over to some degree, and we have an openness. And so I had people who were like, "Oh, that was great. That was great. That was great." And then one young woman who's roughly my age came up, and because I'd made a comment at the beginning of Mass about, like, my family sat right there in this pew, and here we are. I'm so grateful to be back here, etc. And she said, "Yeah, well, my family sat right over there too, my whole life. And I'm one of those people who that first marriage broke my heart and didn't work out." And I told a little bit in 30 seconds or less her story, and how, like, I didn't come to Christmas Eve Mass to just be kind of blasted in front of my kids for this part. And it just was one of those things that really sat with me, in the sense of this is that the teaching of the Lord is the teaching of the Lord. So
Right.
that's not going to change.
Right.
But the way in which I just used it as an example of a hard teaching on Christmas,
Sure.
on Christmas, where a lot of folks are there for the one time, as opposed to seeing that as an opportunity to win them over. Here I am to be able to say, hey, let's step up, or step up or step out, kind of a situation.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right moment. And then secondly, again, when I do talk about the hard things, to not ambush people with the hard things, to not use the hard teaching as the kind of hammer or the cudgel. And it was one of those moments where I think about it all the time, because since then I have many, many times preached on what Jesus had said about divorce and remarriage.
Yeah.
But I always do that with the knowledge of, there's people here that this is part of their story, that they didn't want it to be part of their story.
Right.
Or maybe they did, they chose that, and they're wondering, what do I do now with this? Whether I don't see it as a sin or do see it as a sin, what do I do with this now? And I didn't offer that at all to anyone.
Yeah.
And that was a big, big learning. I think about that all of the time, especially when talking about hard things, is there are people here who this is their story. This isn't just a topic. This is their life.
And I'm imagining you probably have experienced that at scale in a way that,
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure, through the Bible in a year, through the Catechism in a year, your words have gone around the world now twice. Not your words, but your words in commenting on the word.
The word.
Has gone around the world twice, and continues kind of for as long as we have podcasts.
Right.
You described that experience on Christmas there. That all preceded Bible in a year, Catechism in a year. I heard that empathy in you in those series. I trust that was intentional. How much did you carry that principle that everything I'm going to talk about, there are thousands of people who are experiencing the ideal, and as many, if not more, the non-ideal, and I still am trying to speak to them? It seems as though that had to be present.
Oh, completely. I'm glad you said that too, because this is what someone is hearing maybe for the first time. I had never thought about until I was actually standing right here recording the story of David and Bathsheba.
Yeah.
I had always in my mind, had approached the story of, like, okay, yeah, David and committed adultery with Bathsheba.
Yeah.
And never even thought, like, wait, he's the king. She's married to one of his officers. It wasn't like he looks down at her in the bath, on top of her roof, and she looks up like, wow, there's the king. Amazing. I wish I could, that this is most likely a sexual assault.
Yeah.
And I never thought of that. But because I was thinking of the fact that there are people from all over the place who are hearing this, and this is actually a different story, a worse story in many ways than, I don't want to say simple adultery. There's all these other elements involved in this. And that sense of doing everything I can to put myself in the shoes of whoever might be listening to these words, and not to shy away from them, but to acknowledge them, I think is necessary.
That brings up this bigger question. God has given you this mantle of preaching, this mantle of responsibility in a unique way. And I wonder about the spiritual dangers of the particular mission and call God has had in your life. Again, I want to be really careful about how I'm contextualizing this, but there are not very many people who have had the reach that God has given your voice I think of Bishop Barron. I think of Archbishop Fulton Sheen. These are two prominent men who had a public platform that has gone far and wide. And you're in that mix. And I wonder about the spiritual dangers of this mission and call and how you navigate some of that. But I'm also wondering about the presence of the Holy Spirit. I imagine those 2 years of doing the Bible in a year and doing the Catechism in a year. How did you experience consolation as well in all of that? So there's the spiritual dangers, but then there's consolation. Talk to me about those two realities, particularly in the context of Bible in a year and Catechism in a year.
The dangers that are obviously very real. Some of the consolations, one is, I might have even shared this with you in maybe a text or something, but I remember maybe it was 3 months into recording for the Bible in a year. And it's grindy. Every morning I would get up, go work out, come back, stand here and try to record. And if I am gone for a weekend, well, they keep posting the episode. And so you got to record 2 the next day. And I remember thinking at one point, because then by this point they had already, January 1st had already hit and people were listening like, oh my gosh, okay, this is incredible. I was experiencing the tension that I think many, many people, when they're doing the Lord's will, experience, but they don't know how to articulate. And it was this. It was, this is hard, but I can't admit that it's hard. Or I don't love this, but I can't admit that I don't love this. Until there was this freedom to be able to say, this is the consolation, okay, this is a burden. Like the not just the task of, doing it, but the kind of the weight of doing it, and that sense of getting it right, and that sense of honoring God's word. And so it's a burden. But then it was, okay, let's acknowledge the full truth. It's a burden. It is. But it's a burden worth carrying. And even more than that, it's a burden I'm genuinely honored to carry. So this is weighing me down in a real way. This is something that is, I don't want to say crushing because that's a little bit hyperbolic, but it's heavy. It's worth carrying. And I'm honored to carry it. And so that was a big consolation of being able to have that honesty with the Lord, honesty with myself. And I've talked to so many people since then who, in their own vocations, whatever it is, to be able to say, oh yeah, you have kids and it's really hard. It's okay to admit that it's really hard because you love your kids, and whatever, all the different ways it could be expressed and applied. That was a big consolation.
And I want to hear about the spiritual dangers in just a second, because I think that lurks there. It must lurk there as well. But I love that you said that. That gives me, that's a great consolation to me. Having raised, 4 boys, through foster care and adoption, and there were years, and still, but the burden is different now. The pain is different now. But the grind of the early years into adolescence was so difficult day in and day out, and you don't get to tap out. And so thank you for saying that. Thank you for putting it in the context of what, again, ordinary families go through, and this was a particular burden, a gift. As you experienced that consolation, did it get easier? Did you reach a flow state where the ideas can come and it became rhythmic? Or was it always a sense of today is the same thing, Groundhog Day, grind it out? Did it ever get easier?
Oh, I would say this. I would say even though it was hard, it was always good.
Yeah.
There are many times when I would be reading, recording, whatever, and I'd be thinking, oh my gosh, I learned this on this random book I had read in high school that was on my mom's dresser that I borrowed.
Right.
Or I think of I remember that was that one class, Sister Susan Woods, 8 a.m. Theology 101. She made this point and I had that. Or here's a priest I once heard say this at a daily mass homily. And it just all these things just kind of, it was almost a, what's the Slumdog Millionaire kind of situation where it's like all of these pieces of my life and what people have given just would come up at various times. And it's just one of those things where I just think, man, praise the Lord, because there was, like you said, flow state of just kind of that sense of I'd stand here and be able to teach. And when it came to the catechism, that was a different kind of a switch of a grind, because I know how to do the Bible. Here is how this goes. Here's the pattern. And they said, we want to switch that up a little bit when it came to the catechism, because people are kind of coming in cold. They might know the stories that you're about to say if you're talking about Elijah, whoever, but who knows what paragraph 204 is in the Catechism. So we need to give them a little more of a prep ahead of time, but not too much because that's going to really bore people and then all these kind of things. And then not only that, but in order to get the rights to be able to publish the Catechism in English on podcast, we had to get permission from the USCCB, who owns the rights. And they've never given anyone permission to do this. And so they said there were some conditions, and the good conditions are legitimate. But one of them was they had 5 experts who would read the transcript afterwards and then offer their corrections, and I have to go back and re-record things. And so for the first literal 21 days plus, it felt like there was someone sitting right here over my shoulder, like, and I'd say something, and I just heard in my head someone with a PhD, way smarter than me, say, "Well, that was stupid. Why would you say that? What are you, a moron?" And it's so stifling. And then it was after the 3rd or 4th week where it was, okay, this is how we're doing it. Trying to get out of my own head and say, okay, it's just fine. This is good. We're just teaching and moving forward.
Well, I do have to comment. It was in the Catechism in a year. It was early on, and we were talking. You were talking. It was day 14. I'll always remember this because you mentioned the power of the Word, and if you remember, the procession of the Word. At the Arise conference. And I have to tell you, Father, I'm on a treadmill. Jill is next to me. She's running. I'm running. And I'm listening, and all of a sudden you start talking about the Arise conference. You didn't name it as Arise conference, but I knew what you were talking about, and Father Andre and the procession. And again, that just to your point, like all the different things in life, the Lord would just in time give you recollection of something, an idea. And I can imagine that was part of how the Lord was working and speaking. And I'm just like fist pumping, in the gym, just so joyful about having been at that moment that you were describing, those many years later. But again, to your point, the Lord is using everything in and through your life to tell these stories to the world.
That's great. And there are many times in the Bible and Catechism where I'm referencing you. I have this friend who once said such and such. That one, the other in particular was, the word and community. I think you had said can be a lamp, or it can be a flashlight, can be sandpaper, can be a mirror. And I was just like, and sometimes I always wonder too, like, should I say Ryan O'Hara or do I say just a friend? I don't know. I don't know if the person wants the shout out or not. But either way, I really appreciate, because I've learned a lot from you. So much.
Thanks, Father. Gosh, that's kind. I'm blushing.
It's the truth.
Talk to me about the spiritual dangers. You're wading into spiritual territory that many people don't experience. We see so often in church world, whether it's Protestant or Catholic, where there's public figures navigate different kinds of spiritual realities. There's a beauty to a hiddenness that maybe can be off the beaten path and has less of the attention of the evil one and so on. How do you experience some of those spiritual darts and dangers and navigate that comes from inherently from the particular mission and call that the Lord has for you as this sort of public figure to teach and preach at a greater scale than most priests, let's say?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I would say that when it comes to like the depth of spiritual attack, I am regularly prayed for by a lot of people, and I'm so grateful. I need that, and I'm really grateful. I don't want to like diminish that at all, because I'm like, don't keep praying. But it's so interesting how the evil one attacks. Here are 2 areas where I would say, and there's more, but here's 2 areas where I would say that this is something that I realize I definitely need an awareness of. So I know that at some point, no one will invite me to be able to share God's word with them. And that's just going to happen. That's just what's going to happen. At some point, I remember I've shared this before, my spiritual director, who he is a hermit up in northern Minnesota, ancient guy, brilliant guy. One day he just kind of unprompted, he said, you're going to be forgotten pretty quickly.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, Father, I know. He's like, no. You're going to be forgotten really quickly. And I was like, okay. And he was just being kind. He was being honest.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're not Thomas Aquinas. It's not like people are going to hold on to your teachings. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And so I've always had this awareness, I would say for forever. But then when you have to experience it in small ways, I realize, oh my gosh, wow, I'm grasping a little bit. And that grasp can be anything from I hope they ask. I hope that I get to be part of this. To someone else gets to do something that's awesome, and I'm like, oh, they're doing something awesome, or with maybe even more to the heart, which is I've got to keep proving myself,
Wow.
as opposed to letting this be about the Lord and about the souls who are going to be hearing His word through the work that we're putting in. That sense of like, okay, no, yeah, there's got to be work that's done. I mean, we have to work really, really hard because they're worth it and because God's worth it, but not because I need to cling to some sense of relevance, for lack of a better term, or some sense of influence or some sense of self. So sometimes when I'm working really, really hard to get like a message or a homily or a talk, whatever, right, I have to guard against that. Guard against the am I working so hard because I want them to like me and want them to invite me back, and I want them to say, "Oh, Father Mike's talk was my favorite talk," versus what does what does God really want? You know what I'm saying? So that's it. I
Yeah.
know the phone's going to stop ringing. Father Tim Nolan. I don't know if you ever knew Father Tim Nolan. He's from the Twin Cities area. He had started the church, St. Paul's in Ham Lake.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
Massive church. Like he built that church, and people. I remember the legendary. Like people would drive an hour on Sunday just to go to mass at St. Paul's, and
Yep.
he was just this dynamic, incredible, like Holy Spirit man. He pioneered this idea, at least in Minnesota, of during the week he would record cassette tapes of his teachings, and because he had a lot of commuting families, commuting people in his parish.
Sure.
And so he would hand out these cassettes of him teaching so they could listen to him on the way to work and back home.
Cool.
It's like
Yeah.
original podcast kind of idea. And then when he retired from there, just again, amazing man. He went to live at this retreat place called Pachaman Terrace, which I
Sure.
loved. I love that place as a retreat facility. And I remember talking with the woman who ran the place at the time, because he's retired there. And she said something along the lines of, and this is not what he said. This is what she said, observing him. She said, I don't know, he's never said this, but I think that sometimes the fact that, because when he retired, he got called everywhere. Like, I know you're free to go anywhere and talk, And she said, and over the course of time, the phone stopped ringing and people stopped asking him to come. And he hasn't ever said it, but I think it kind of saddens him, And I remember hearing that, 15 years ago and thinking, that's all of us. Like that is every single one of us. At some point, the phone stops ringing. At some point, I want to hear from someone else. At some point, our work is done in some ways. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so that I just want to be able to be willing to let go of that when God asks, or it tells me, hey, give it to someone else. I need to give it to someone. He's going to take it. He's going to give it to someone else. That's just what's going to happen. Second thing is what's connected to that, whether I'll be able to do that well or not, is I got a text message recently from one of our former Focus missionaries, who's now currently a priest out in Michigan, and hey, now he's, hey brother, da da da. He said, I was just praying, and you came to mind in my prayer, and the words of an old priest, something an old priest once shared with me, came to me, and I want to pass them along to you. And the words were the words of Jesus speaking to this priest, now speaking to me, saying, you used to love me, but now you just work for me.
Wow.
And he said, I just want to pass it along, praying for you, give your heart to Jesus, kind of thing. It wasn't like I know something's going on. It was more like just like, hey, I just want to, you do a lot of work, and I just want to give you that word. Jesus, from Jesus, you used to love me, now you just work for me, which resonated with all of my prayer for the last, year or maybe less than a year. I pray a lot with the church of Ephesus, that Jesus in Revelation speaking to them and saying, I know you believe the right things. Right. You work so hard. Your perseverance is amazing, but I have this one thing against you. You've lost your first love. So do the things you learned at first. And it keeps coming back to me always, 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 because I know that at some point it's just like this goes away. This microphone goes away. And all you have is the Lord, the Holy Spirit, God our Father in his heart, and whoever is in front of you right here, because that's it. So that's the attack. That's the battle. And it might not be unique for me. I don't think it is, but I think that it's
well, it's actually strangely ordinary.
Yeah.
In the sense, Father, that I'm like, wait a minute, you experience envy? Like in a speaking context, that's again, it makes me feel normal.
Yeah. Well,
um,
sorry, can I say something about that?
please. Yeah.
So it took me by surprise because, no, I mean, it's great. I can listen to whoever's talking like, oh, that was amazing. And I'm so grateful. And it's not until, and this is a very as honest as I can be. When I first kind of discovered a little bit more about my heart, about where there's a freedom to rejoice in other people's gifts,
Yeah.
is when, oh, your gifts are so different than mine. Like, yeah, that's amazing. Go, go, go.
Right.
It's awesome.
Right.
Or your life is so different than mine. And I
Right.
just admire how God works through you. And just, this is incredible.
Mm.
But then it's like, oh no, we're kind of the same thing.
Mm.
Like, we have the same gifts, but you have them more. Or we have the same job, but you do it way better. And that took me by surprise because I hadn't been protected from any kind of envy or jealousy, or even a reluctance to rejoice in someone's giftedness, because, oh yeah, we're kind of different categories. And then along comes Monsignor Shea. Even then it's different because because we speak very differently.
Sure.
And nonetheless, and also I truly love and admire the man personally and professionally. And so he's still easy to rejoice in, So last year at Seek is a good example. Last year at Seek, he gave the talk the night before I gave my talk. And it was one of those, I'm in the stands going, oh my gosh, this is incredible. This is amazing. And then, but here's that little thing that pops up and says, well, you better be better tomorrow. You better be good tomorrow. You better bring it tomorrow. As opposed to just that sense of being able to say, look at the thousands and thousands of young people and old people whose lives are being moved by the Holy Spirit working through this incredible man.
Yeah.
And just letting it be that, which, I mean, ultimately it came back to that place of letting it be that. But, it's so fascinating how it could take you by surprise. It took me by surprise a little bit. Like, well, no, I like him. I love him. This has nothing to do with me. And then like, oh, but I better be good too. And it's like, no, this is not a competition. If it is, it's a competition, a battle against principalities and powers. It is a battle for souls with the people next to us, not against the people next to us. So in the years since then, I've had so many great points of encounter with Monsignor, who is even more humbling because he's amazing. Like, he genuinely on so many levels is, as a human being, as a Christian, as a priest, as a leader, and then as a speaker too. I have one trick, and that's I can speak relatively well. Monsignor is like across the board, just amazing human being. And so once again, we're not in the same category because he's another level of person than me. And there's a freedom in that. But I don't know. Just that was I never want it to be weird between me and him. So if he ever listens to this, Monsignor Shea, I love you.
Well, may it be so. I hope he's a regular listener. I don't know that, but why not?
Yeah, why not?
It also is interesting to how just the arc of a career, the arc of a life. As you've been in it longer, you get better. You're more in your skin, and you feel more comfortable. You're kind of I think of it like almost like a football career. Like you have your kind of peak years, but then even Tom Brady eventually falls off. But now that you've been in it for longer, you've now have many more people younger than you, than older than you, that are doing this. And there is this natural way in which, wow, what is the next generation going to look like? And they are stronger. It is better. And we're playing these different kind of roles. I'm experiencing that even in SPO after 25 years in the work, going, wow, I used to be the guy who could do all the things, and now there's 10, 12, 15 of they're everywhere. And I'm like, oh, it's humbling, so we all experience that. And it's so beautiful to hear even your own story of that.
One of the questions I ask myself regularly, especially if I'm complaining about something or have some kind of like negative attitude towards something, is would I rather be otherwise? So when it comes to the burden of preaching,
oh, that's a good one.
And there's, going into a weekend and it's like, oh gosh, I have to just this battle of trying to figure out something to say that I believe the Lord wants, that they need. Okay, would I rather not have this opportunity? Same thing with the podcasts or with anything. And then similarly, here are priests around the country, around the dioceses, whatever, who are doing great. Like, would I rather them not do great? Right. Would I rather that I was the only one, or whatever? And like the answer is 100% no. That clarifies things instantly. It is one of those questions that even if there's any kind of sense of littleness, if there's any kind of sense of ruefulness or kind of resentment, like that's eradicated immediately by the question, would I want it to be otherwise?
Yeah.
And that's like, no, absolutely. I mean, it's Moses, right, saying, would that all my people be prophets,
Amen.
all God's people be prophets? They're out there, and would I rather they not be out there?
Don't you think that the keynotes at the National Eucharistic Congress painted that picture that you're describing? We kind of got it all, that you played a particular role in your space, in your way for that night.
Yeah.
And then you have Mother Olga,
Yeah.
who decidedly playing a different role, almost like a little Mother Teresa, you know,
Yeah.
I'm like, who I wasn't ready for that, you know. And it's just so beautiful to see. I think, again, Bishop Barron and Gloria Purvis and Chris Stefanik, and there's all these different gifts. And it was really on beautiful display. Monsignor Shea, you know, he had that memorable talk at the morning session. Say what you will about where the church is at. I think it's the best time in the world to be a Catholic. And the gifts are exploding around the church. And again, you know, Father Mike, I think you have pushed the church forward through the particular gift of preaching that you have. And the Lord has used your voice in so many times and places. And I feel like, yes, you may not be all of these other things, but you are you. And I know, and I want to celebrate that. And what an incredible gift. I just want to celebrate who God has created you to be.
Well, thank you for that. It really comes back to, in so many ways, the gifts that God pours out are they're for the people of God, right? They're for the buildup of the kingdom. That God doesn't give any of us gifts for ourselves. He gives us gifts to be used for others. And once a gift comes out of a person, like once it becomes about the person who has the gift or is using the gift, then it is that's dangerous, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about even as you mentioned, there's been fruit. And so in the work that I do here, there's been fruit. One of the things that is necessary to highlight is the fact that none of this has been by myself. I think of other people who, like yourself, I don't know if you like take care of everything in the podcast from soup to nuts, like from the beginning to the end. But actually, even our first student, we had a student in 2007 who said, "Hey, would you record your homilies and make them podcasts?" And I was like, "Well, it seems kind of weird to kind of put your stuff out there." She said, "Well, no, just hit record, hit stop, give it to me." She's like taught herself how to clean it up, how to post it, how to maintain it. And that was someone else. That's completely a student and now former student who just did that for years and years and years. And without her name is Mary, but if you didn't know, you'd never know. You'd never know. And none of the other things would be possible, except she thought, I want to do this because I think it's worth sharing. Yeah. And then, you know, Ascension says, hey, if we gave you a camera and a microphone, would you record some videos? I'm like, yeah, I can't. Just sit there, hit record, talk, and then hit stop, and then give them to us. We'll take care of the rest. Without those people who, and no one knows their names, but they're the ones that are responsible for all the religious ed classes that have, you know, hopefully gotten something good out of the Ascension Presents videos or whatever the other things are. And you just think it's never, ever one person.
You know, I'm guessing that's also a gift to you. I couldn't imagine what it'd be like to both record the thing.
I literally couldn't do it.
Deal with all the stuff, but then also deal with all the noise of putting it online and trying to sift all of that. You're probably protected from a lot of that, right?
Thank you for saying that, because I've thought about that so many times. I get to craft a thing. Like, here's what I think the Lord, I get to say it, and I get to forget about it. I don't have to like watch the numbers and say like, oh, did people like that? Did they not like that? So a lot of the stuff we do comes from my interactions with our students.
Sure.
Which is one of the things that I think is, man, I can't imagine if this was someone's like full-time job, where their full-time job was to travel and preach. It'd be isolating for sure. It would also, I mean, the capacity to have self-deception and not know yourself would be like immense.
Sure.
But since I come back here, and imagine like you come back to your family, like, okay, no, they don't let you live in your illusions, but to be able to come back here and realize, okay, this is where home really actually is. And all they care about when I come home is whether or not I'm here for them, whether or not I care about them. They don't care about a crowd. They might, to some degree, they're proud of me, and I appreciate that. But the depth is like, okay, actually, I just want to know if you love me. I want to know if you're there for me when I need you. And I strive to be. People ask me, how do I get into this? And they say, how do I start doing what you do? And the answer in some ways is, I don't know, because I was asked to do something and I just kept saying yes. So the student says, hey, would you do the podcast? I'm like, well, I don't think so. Okay, fine, yes. Yeah. And then Ascension said, would you do this for us? Yes. And Steubenville calls and said, would you do this? Yes. Or even the local parish says, are you free this Wednesday? Could you come give a talk to our 10th graders? Yes. And it's just that. And then God gets to do with that what he wants. And the only thing that I ever had, it was my own idea, was the Bible in a year and Catechism in a year. Was like, I thought, I really want to do this, but that wasn't because I had this great, brilliant idea. It was because I needed it. And I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever read through the Bible like this unless I have to. And so there was something about this that just like, just saying yes is the key.
Oh, that's so interesting that you described it that way. Had you had ideas about doing something like Bible in a year, but then what actually made it happen versus just you doing it privately and again, one of your students putting something out? Like, how did that actually come about?
Well, yeah, I had dreams of wanting to do this. And I think of a couple different moments where I remember talking with one of my brother's friends. My brother was a special operator in the military for a long, long time. And one of his buddies came up to visit for Thanksgiving a couple times. And at one point he was talking about how he was reading the Bible. And I was like, oh man, here's this soldier who is like, in these places of danger and he's reading the Bible. I just remember thinking, I wish I could do something that would help our servicemen and women. Like, I wish I could help. Wow. There's this whole demographic of people in the military and they're so underserved when it comes to chaplains, when it comes to priests, when it comes to whatever.
Sure.
And I remember thinking, I wish I could do something for someone like John. His name is John. Someone like John and other people. And that was one thing. Another was, I remember it might have been one of the God's Not Dead movies, and just their classic film cinema. But there was a story of a storyline in one of the movies that was a Muslim woman was listening to someone on podcast explain 1 Corinthians, and she was giving her heart to Jesus, giving her life to Jesus. And I remember thinking, I wish that I could do something that just would reach people who they have no faith, or people who are not Christian, to show them the truth of Christianity, truth of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And just read the Bible, kind of that sense. And so those are just two beats of where I just was like, I wish I could do something like this that just could get God's word into people's hearts and minds and hands. And then in 2020 with COVID and everything, the convergence of things, one is everyone's fighting about everything. And I'm constantly online looking for the next smart thing to think, the next piece of wisdom. And so I'm so distracted. I'm looking for the next thing, distressed because of all the things going on. And I was reading the book of Judges at the time. And it's a thing I'll recount many times. I realized as I'm reading Judges, this is not the first time this has ever happened. And this is not the worst thing that's ever happened. There were generations in Israel where there's no leadership. It's just chaos. And here we are in month 3, kind of that kind of situation. Right. And realizing we need the wisdom of the word more than the wisdom of the world. And also Monsignor Shea, his book From Christendom to Apostolic Mission. Yeah. So incredible. It talks about rediscovering a biblical worldview, biblical imagination. And it all converged to me reaching out to Ascension and saying, hey, what do you think about the idea of doing a Bible and a catechism in a year podcast where I just go through the Bible and catechism all together in 1 year? Also because we have focused missionaries, and one of their assignments of the 2 years of being a missionary is to read all the narrative books of the Bible and the catechism. And like 9% of them do it. And so I have all these missionaries. I'm like, how can I help you guys? And so then they essentially said, let's do it.
I love that. I love that on so many levels, because what you described here in two ways. One is you never decided to go and do all these things.
Right.
People have been asking and they just keep asking. But there were dreams too. There were dreams there.
Yeah, it's a good point.
And it was interesting to hear your dreams and how that then played out. And the Lord is using both of those things, both people asking you for the thing, and where are you dreaming, and how is the Lord inviting you in that? And so it's a both and.
Yeah.
That's at least what I'm hearing as you're describing.
That's a really good way to describe it, because my perception had always been, I just say yes when they ask, that kind of thing. And that's also my temperament. There are some people who are much more choleric than me who we're going to make this happen. And they're incredible. I'm more this is an opportunity. Sure, I want to
Yeah.
help. But as you pointed out, yeah, there's a lot of things that have just been on my heart that
Yeah.
just, and it seems like those are the things that, yeah, when they come together like that, they've been blessed. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
How do you keep track of all the talks that you're doing? I mean, you got homilies, Ascension presents, Bible in the ear. Like, how do you keep track of it all? Like, literally.
Multiple places. So I have to arrange and rearrange things a lot. So I use Evernote as a note-taking,
Yeah.
cross-platform note-taking tool, and so that's one place where I just capture ideas. And there's a number of ways I will capture articles online, just move them over to Evernote, so they can be searchable, that kind of thing. If I have an idea, I'll write it in Evernote, or
Mhm.
I also have a collection of yellow legal pads that are just stacks and stacks high. So the Evernote is a place where I try to dump, like, here's a story, don't forget the story. Here's an idea, don't forget the idea. Like, so I'm gonna scroll over. I go to my Evernote quick, and I have a doc I'm working on now, this last season of through the summer and into right now. And it was like every single Sunday homily and every single talk is kind of like, here's the chunk. And so I keep dropping notes into them. I'm thinking like usually 3 to 4 months ahead. And so like, here's talks and homilies,
Yeah.
and also as well as Ascension presents ideas. And so here's a couple ideas that are just like, here's bullet points. Something that really struck my heart was God has infinite attention. You have his infinite attention at all times. This is I got it from C.S. Lewis.
Sure.
And so like, okay, that is so powerful. I need to remember this. Then I wrote down, at the name of Jesus, every knee must bend. Okay, but what happens when Jesus says your name? Like when he says Mary at the empty tomb, right? When she says Rabboni, like his name, we're all going to bend. What happens
Right.
when the one, these kind of, it's just like ideas. Matthew Perry, before he died, he talked about addiction, and he had a line that said, it's the secrets he said, the secrets are what kills us. And so I'm like, okay, that's important. These are some ideas,
Right.
so bullet points and ideas.
Right.
So Evernote is one. And then I have, I don't have the yellow legal pads here, but all of my notes, like if I'm going to like work out a talk, is on yellow legal pad paper, because I just need to see it. And a lot of times I have multiple threads of ideas. So I have to have multiple legal pads because I need to see them all at once in order to kind of keep them kind of coherent in my brain. So I'll start like, here's an outline. Okay, here's the intro. Here's the next thing. I'm working it through. Like, I don't know if I really want to go there. So I'm going to start that next thread on this other legal pad in case I don't want to botch the first one.
Sure.
And so that kind of thing.
So you work out the prep of a talk is really manual, analog,
Yes.
on yellow legal pads.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I'll do for preaching Sunday homilies at the beginning of a season, what I'll do is I'll diagram them. So I'll have like, okay, second Sunday of ordinary time, first reading, main point, couple lines, second reading, main point, couple lines, gospel, main point, couple lines, third Sunday of ordinary time, And so I can see them all flip it through some yellow legal pads. So I can see like some flow. Cause a lot of times I like to do like series and see how do these fit together? What could the church be saying to our students in these 4 Sundays in a row? And I get a better kind of visual understanding of that rather than flipping pages and having to read the whole thing. I'll do that. That helps a ton. Sometimes when I put that off, I'm scrambling to like find like, what is it God's trying to say? But when I go through all of the readings, it's like usually about 16 weeks or so.
That's sort of the chunk that you'll tackle at a time, and then you'll repeat that process
for summer,
so many years, so many weeks into the future.
Yep. And that just gives me a kind of a bird's eye view of here's where the church takes us from January 13th or whatever day it is to Pentecost.
Yep.
And like here's what the church is trying to lead. And so that's very helpful. But so digital is kind of the brain dump. If I put it in Evernote, I know I'll be able to find it.
Yep.
And then the really working things out is writing it out.
So then what do you have with you, whether it's a conference or a homily? What kind of paper, if any, do you have in front of you?
Usually it's the yellow legal pad. And sometimes if I have a lot of quotes in a talk or in a homily, I'll type out the quotes because it's a lot faster than writing them out. So for example, last year, we did a series over Lent based off of the book He Leadeth Me by Father Walter Chizek.
Oh, yeah.
And so incredible. And so there's a lot of quotes by Father Walter. And so because of that, I ended up preaching off of like typed out notes and printed out notes, because there's just so many chunks of his own words that like it's just easier for my brain if I have my thoughts, his words, my thoughts, his words. And so sometimes people will see like, oh, there's white paper, there's printer paper, because there's probably a lot of quotes in that kind of thing. But otherwise, it's the yellow legal pads.
So when you say you've got these reams of yellow legal pads, you mean that in that you've kept. I mean,
well, I've had like here's an example. This is a binder that of talks that I've given. It just says potential talks, because if I'm invited to a place, I'm like, well, have I talked about this in the past? And so I just have like this. Again, these are just different talks. I guess some of them are in the back of a printer paper, but they're all different talks. Some letters, I guess.
And those are those future, or are those from past?
These are all past talks, and I sometimes keep them. And these are this is like a whole nother section of I don't know if you can see how many are in here. Just like
I would have a field day in your office there.
And no, it's really helpful, because sometimes I forget, like, where have I said this? Even this morning for Mass, I was like, I even told everyone in Mass, I was like, I don't know if I've said this week yet, because I've been praying about this concept every day this week.
Yeah.
So I apologize if I said this on Wednesday, but here's this thing. And so it's really helpful for me to try to keep some kind of track.
You've heard of I'm sure you've seen the idea of a last lecture. Professors, deliver their last lecture. It may or may not be on their subject matter. You bring a vaunted professor in and they have their last lecture. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm thinking of one lecture for you. And you have a chance to tell wisdom around preaching to all current seminarians and deacons. They're in formation. What would you say? Advice, encouragement around who they are as preachers.
Mm-hmm. I put a ton of time into every Sunday homily. So many hours, anywhere from 10 to 20 to 25 hours per week per Sunday homily. And my homilies are also long. And I've kind of designed it because I know like it's this unique situation where it's going out. I want it to be excellent, not only for the Lord, I want it to be excellent for the people who are going to hear this. I want them to get something of value to their lives. I want them to get closer to the Lord. Because there's always that thing of like, I know you know this, the concept of the preacher's burden. The preacher's burden is that thing you have to keep digging for and fighting for. So you don't just get up on a Sunday or whatever day it is and say, here's an interesting thing. No, what is the most important thing that every person in this church or every person in this congregation, wherever it is, they need to know this, they need to do this. And to fight for that is really difficult a lot of times, because sometimes it's the first idea and you're like, Lord, Thank you. This is amazing. And sometimes it's like, no, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. And you have to keep going, because I never want to get up and just say, I'm taking up your space and taking up your time because I've been allotted these next few minutes. And so there's something about this that just like you have to, I think preachers, you have to find what is that, again, preacher's burden is, what's the thing they absolutely have to know, the thing they absolutely have to do, that if you didn't say it, you would be incomplete. Their lives would be incomplete. And I think maybe that could be the takeaway. Maybe that would be the thing that I would tell anyone.
Finding the burden and then pursue that burden. I know where that comes from, and I've heard a number of different preachers talk about it, but it's an unusual phrase.
Yeah. So it doesn't mean the difficulty of preaching. It doesn't mean the task of preaching. What it means is that this is the thing, this is the message, this is the truth that needs to be said and needs to be heard.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we're like, okay, and this is my older brother once called me up and left a voicemail, and he said, hey, he's driving home from Sunday Mass, and he said, yeah, so I was just at Mass, and I just, he's hem and hawed, and then he said, do you guys have classes on how to preach? And he went on this rant about, he's like, so we heard the gospel of Jesus healing the blind man, and then the priest got up and said, well, we heard the gospel of Jesus healing the blind man, and just basically gave us a summary of what we all just heard. And he's like, I could do that. I literally just heard what you said. Tell me what I don't know. Tell me what I need to know. Tell me what I need to do and why it matters, that kind of thing. Here's my taking this back and saying, okay, at the same time, I understand. I'm in a privileged place in the sense working on a college campus, and the chaos of working in a parish, I'm spared a bunch of that. There's other chaos that's in my life, but there's the chaos of working in the parish. I'm spared a little bit of that.
Sure.
The burden of other duties of a priest. I don't have all of them in the sense that I visit the hospital, but not every single day. As an example, I don't usually get called to nursing homes, although when I was a parish priest, I did. And there's a lot of those other busyness things that need to
Sure.
get done. And I don't want to put that burden of expectation on any other priest. But I do think that any time we get up to preach, we have to have work this out and drill this down as best we can to say, okay, what is that thing? What is that thing that isn't just a nice thing to say, but must be proclaimed and must be heard? That is it. And if I get into a pulpit and I don't know what that is, then I need to keep it short.
And what I've heard is that if you're carrying a burden like a long way, you cannot wait to unload it. If you're carrying something heavy, you can't wait to put it down. So there's a weightiness to it, but also like, I am so excited.
Yeah.
I can't wait. There's that sense of anticipation, and the Lord finally gave me the thing that I can't wait to unload.
Yeah.
For my good, for their good, and so on.
The shadow side of that is it takes a long, long time. And I sometimes wonder, and I bring this to prayer, and I sometimes wonder, okay, God, am I doing this the wrong way? In the sense that, would it be better? Would you want me to put less time into this so that, now I have an hour to spend with this student? Because I didn't take that hour, or because as I said, I have multiple hours every week. And I try to do that in a way that still honors the mission of meeting with students and taking care of the business of running a campus ministry and all those things. But sometimes I wonder, like, God, do you want me to not put all this time in? Secondly, I sometimes wonder, God, again, my homilies are long. And I wonder, God, would it honor you better if they were shorter, in the sense of just, is it less helpful for them to be in the 20s? And sometimes that. And then lastly, on the back end, to have the burden, to have that fire, that thing I need to say, like you said, they need to unload almost every, and a lot of, I mean, maybe everyone who speaks, everyone who preaches has this experience to it. Maybe they don't, but okay, here's Sunday night. Like, I don't know if I did it. Like, I don't know if I did it well, because that was so important. Like, did they get it, or did I miss the mark? And there's something about, but that's worth it. I mean, that's another thing that's like, to have that question of, it was so important that they understand this. Did I do it justice? Did I do the Lord justice? I think is a good question to ask if you care about it enough. But those other two questions are, Lord, do you want me to spend this much time on this? And
how does he respond?
I don't know. Okay, sorry.
Is it true wondering? Yeah.
Let me answer. Here's what I think. Every so often, someone will come to Mass with us up here on campus, and they're from out of town, and they'll say something like, hey, this, your Sunday homilies got us through whatever, got me through this, and really helped me grow my faith. I know Jesus in a new way. And usually I'll tell them, I say, I'm glad you said that, because I often think, God, is this what you want me to do? Should I just not put the time in? Just kind of get up to bat and just do my best, without really putting the work in ahead of time. And so sometimes people show up and they'll say, this really helped me. And then I think, okay, then I'll keep going. Then that's the main way that I think there's some kind of response from the Lord, that is practically people showing up saying, no, all that work helped me. So
I do think you're giving an example to what is often sorely lacking, which is the average Catholic gets about 7 minutes of formation a week. They're also taking in, 100x times formation through YouTube and other media. And, so the world is largely forming us, and parish priests we have about 7 minutes. Whereas a typical Protestant church is 30 to 40 minutes. That can be quite significant. I think part of what you're doing, and this is why I value the approach that you take, because it pushes back against the obvious weight of so many other ideas and things that sort of assail so many of us. We need more time. We, as the people of God, need more spiritual input.
Yeah.
And I value that. And I think the stories that you're hearing gives evidence to why that's so valuable. But it comes at a cost. Yeah. It's like you would love if you could just, cut that in a, 1/4 of that. If you could get the same result, I know you would do it.
Yeah, I think
because you're
so.
not trying to prepare.
Right.
Or I don't know.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too, perhaps. But
like you're saying, there is something about that kind of model. A lot of the, like Sunday homilies off of that sense of like, here's a Protestant preacher who I really like listening to, and
sure.
they do a good job, and I'm not bored, and I'm getting a lot of content. I'm getting a lot of, even if we're making one point over the course of 30 minutes or whatever it is,
Yep.
Like, okay, that's fine. Hopefully it's stickier. I sometimes wonder if the length, people will say, oh, it didn't feel long. As long as they keep saying it didn't feel long, that's some kind of, at least, I don't want to take too much for it, but it seems like implicit permission to still be a little bit longer than the average in that sense. But I would say, as a kind of a thought to any of us who are preaching, that if the feedback is that was long, then we probably should do something about that in terms of either making that not feel long or cutting it down and being more efficient. I think sometimes length, on the longer side, shows a lack of preparation, not a abundance of information.
Yes. No, that's true. How long are your daily homilies?
Daily homilies are pretty short. I'm 3 to 5 minutes.
Awesome. Father, thank you. Thank you.
That was like, once you get talking, apparently, Ryan, we just keep going. I keep going.
I love any opportunity to sit down and talk with you about these things. Really grateful. I was going to say, I say things like, well, where could people find you online? I don't think that's that hard. But where would you direct people if people wanted to hear more of what you're doing out in the world?
Well, I think, bulldogcatholic.org is our website for our campus ministry up here at the University of Minnesota Duluth. And that's a good place to just even see, like, here's what day-to-day looks like. This is what we do on a daily basis. These are the people that I live with. These are the people that God the Lord has entrusted to me.
That's right.
So bulldogcatholic.org is our campus ministry website, which has a bunch of resources. Our mutual friend, Matt Smith, and Smith House, are the ones who designed the website years ago. They're revamping it. Very soon, probably by the time this is aired, it's going to be revamped, and he does such great work.
This has been an honor and a joy, Father. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Same. Thanks, Ryan. God bless.
What a great conversation. I'm so grateful. Thank you, Father Mike. I would love to hear your thoughts on the show. Please reach out at ryanohera.org/betterpreach. There's a little contact form there, or you could share a rating and written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And also, say hi on Instagram. Would love to connect there too, at betterpreach. You have millions of choices when you listen to podcasts. Thanks for press and play today. See you next time.